Hi, everybody. Tonight we're with Bill Thompson. He's in Bellingham, Washington. And I know Bill from Santiago, Chile. We met out there. He was a pioneer for the Baha'i Faith in Santiago in Chile. And so was my family and I. And so we spent a lot of time together at different events. And we spent quite a bit of time, I think, in the kitchen, didn't we, Bill?
Yeah, we did. I always like to be there to be serving and not be out front as a foreigner or something.
The same here. So yeah, we spent a lot of time back in the kitchen. And anyway, Bill, if you would share your story about how you became a Baha'i and why you're a Baha'i, we'd love to hear it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think my leading up to being a Baha'i had some history. In the 10th grade, we were asked to write a paper in English, The World You Want. So I wrote, The World I Want, a Uniracial Society. And the teacher hit the roof and gave me a fail and said, "You've been plagiarizing. Where did you get this?" And I lived in small town Cornfield, Iowa, and didn't have any interaction with anybody on such things. But I just think the world had problems. People had issues with each other, and we'd learn to travel more and get to know each other and probably intermarry. And just over time, I think the problems would issue out. So I told him I made up that word like unicycle and all that stuff, and my parents defended me, and I got a D instead
Oh
of an
no.
F. Uh, but that's kind of the way I felt, and I never felt I was a better Christian, maybe, and going to church all the time and everything, but maybe somebody that was living up to what he thought God expected of him in another way, the best he could. God wouldn't hold that against them until they knew more. So I I went to Illinois Tech, and I enjoyed coming to Iowa to finish up my degree, University of Iowa. Instead of a city landscape, it was ivy covered buildings and all of that. And I had to take some electives. And I took a religions course because the university had that as one of the majors. And I read that in Hinduism, they said that all the religions are different paths up the mountain, and once you get to the top, they all converge. And that stuck with me. And the dean there of that program had come to our town and spoken in our church, which kind of put my parents at ease once I was a Baha'i. And he wrote a book about one of the figures in our faith, Shoghi Effendi, and said he was one of the 6 people most like Jesus alive in the world today, which I thought was quite impressive.
Wow, it
Um,
is.
and things like that. I I was drafted to go into the Army as soon as I finished my degree. I was at Fort Knox behind a typewriter because I had a college degree, I guess. And
Hmm.
uh, I had a request come by for traveling with an Army exhibit. And it was for 90 days. And we had quite a schedule around the country of places to put up this exhibit on the Medal of Honor. And we had a big, thick book of recipients of the Medal of Honor who did things valorous, not killed a lot of people, but under fire they rescued people or that kind of a thing, sacrificing in cases, throwing themselves on a grenade to save their buddies. So it was quite an honorable thing to do in that controversial time of Vietnam. We didn't have trouble at that exhibit like other exhibits might have. We were in fairs and malls um, and places like that.
All in the States.
Yes, we did a loop. They sent me to Iowa first, which was my home state on purpose. And then we went through South Dakota to Billings and set it up there in a mall. And then on to the northwest corner, right where I am now, down the road in Mount Vernon at their fair. And it was a building. Well, it was a stockade type thing. I was impressed with the diversity, but now I'm in this zone years later.
Wow.
I was getting more positive about the country. I had thought my dad was in the Army, World War II. My older brother served in Germany, and I will do the honorable thing, but the country's really messed up. I think I will go to Canada after I honorably get out of the Army. But this trip turned me around. I was seeing how wonderful the people were. They were kind to us. There were three of us. They would invite us to dinner. Um, they it was just pleasant. The country was beautiful, and I said, "This is just politics. We'll get past it." So we swung down the coast to California and across to Texas, and we were in a little town in Georgia that had a boys' military academy, and those boys were bragging how they chased a black person out of the tree after he was shaking down the pecans and got the pecans. And the white houses were on paved streets and painted, and the black houses were on dirt streets and not painted. And it was Thanksgiving. And it kind of took all the air out of my positivity I had picked up so far on the trip.
Mhm.
So we had stops in South Carolina and North Carolina until the North Carolina State Fair. And there we were at between the two entrance doors at the end of the exhibit hall. And in front of us was the Baha'i exhibit. And I told myself by then, I've seen everything, all the gurus of the minute and all this and that at these fairs. I'm not going to buy anything at a fair. But the different people that came and went, and by the way, I was staying with my cousin there who told me they had just had a KKK parade the last month. So I was still in the early 60s, late 60s South kind of feeling.
Okay.
But these people that came were professors, students, um, professional people, teachers, just all races and all ages. And beside us was a corner tables of the egg producers and coffee producers where we could sit down and chat between things with different people. I got invited to a couple of what we call firesides in a student apartment over those 2 weeks. And I was sitting there listening to what they were saying, and including there was a black man from the Mauritius Islands, about as black-skinned as a person can be,
Mhm.
nose to nose with this co-ed, talking about the unity of humanity. And and she went off into a bedroom to say a prayer, she said, and came back and said, "I want to be a Baha'i." And I'd been listening to these people. Another young man there, a student, was Larry Miller, who many Baha'is know because he um, has done wonderful things, and his wife headed up the Martin Luther King events in Atlanta in their time there. Um, he was a grad student, and he said he had read about Toynbee, I believe, that the civilizations have an impulse and they rise and they have a high standard and things happen and they take the world up, but then they become maybe uh, go downhill as everybody becomes more bureaucratic and they're there for the honor, the money, or something like that. And then somewhere else, some kind of an impulse in the world happens that makes a civilization happen there. And he said when he heard about the Baha'i Faith, which teaches that all the religions are progressive. So from Buddhism to Zoroastrianism, Islam, Hinduism, is Moses, Jesus, right up through the Baha'i revelations, which are two. Um, this was advancement, really. God spoke to people as they could understand more, and they were ready to accept that and raise their reality a little bit each time until something really better was supposed to be happening, which would be the kingdom of God on earth, as Jesus prayed in the in the Our Father prayer.
Mhm.
What did that mean? Nobody knew at the time. And he said, I have much more to tell you, but you cannot bear it now. Every prophet can say all of this, but their mission is limited to the capacity of infantile mankind at each stage to say more. So the Baha'i Faith, well, one more thing at that meeting, a young woman came up to me, another student, and I was leaning on the wall, sitting on the carpet in this apartment listening, and she said, "Do you always glow like this?"
Hmm.
I said, "What? I do believe this. I need to see what this is."
Baha'u'llah is shining his light on you.
Yeah. And well, I was changing. I was believing what I was hearing, and
Hmm.
I said, I do need to investigate this.
Hmm.
So Larry Miller gave me a couple of books to travel with. One was this same Shoghi Effendi, who was not um, the manifestation of God that built the faith that came with the message that this faith brings, but he was an administrator afterwards for his lifetime as an adult. And so I opened that book, but it was very, very complex. He was a scholar, and I said, "This is great, but I'm not ready for this. Right? I'm glad to know there's meat in this." But I said this, so I had an introductory book about the Baha'i Faith, which I read, and I said, "Yeah, this is what I believe." So I traveled on with the exhibit until we came to Washington, D.C., to the unit headquarters. Looked up Baha'i in the phone book and didn't need to see another Baha'i. I said, "I want to become a Baha'i. How do I do that?"
Oh, awesome.
So they referred me to a get together in another suburb of Washington. And so I said, they knew I was there to try to become enrolled as a Baha'i.
Hmm.
And so it was kind of funny. They didn't know me at all. And in that time, some people said, "Could you come over and sit at this table?" And they asked me a few questions, and they said, "Well, he does seem to be awfully happy." So I guess I made the grade. That isn't necessary now or practiced or anything, but
Right.
so
About how old were you then, Bill?
I was, let's see, that was in 60 in 69. So I was 24.
No. Okay.
Yeah. A couple
You-
other interesting things happened on that trip. Um, one of the two people with me, they were a sergeant and a master sergeant, and me, a spec five, a regular enlisted man or a drafted man. And this one guy said, when he was out in the jungle in Vietnam and he was surrounded by Viet Cong, he said, "God, if I live through this, I'll quit smoking." I thought, that's kind of interesting. I don't think God cares if you smoke or not, but he lived up to that commitment, and I don't see him doing other stuff too religiously. And maybe that's how I will quit smoking. So, okay, so that after that I didn't smoke. And we had changed with another exhibit coming into the Washington on the en route, and those two guys thought drinking was getting a bottle and going back to the hotel room, and that wasn't me. And so, although I thought the religions that didn't approve of drinking that much were kind of, well, I can handle that. I know, I'm okay. We're not going to get. Uh, I said I didn't want to drink like that, and I said, "Just a minute. I think it says in the Baha'i writings that Baha'is don't drink." And so that got me over that hump of thinking that uh, it wasn't cool to not drink.
Yep. Uh-huh.
It was cool to not drink.
Right.
And I said, some things don't fit you like a glove. Maybe somebody in another continent wants to have two wives, and Baha'is only have one wife. But if this is the religion for the unity of mankind, of all these religions have prophesied, then each person will make adjustments. And all those thoughts said, this is this is what I'd like to be. So I came home to my brother's house there, who I was staying with, to wrap it
Mhm.
up. And I said, "I've become a Baha'i," and I was all excited. And he immediately wrote a letter to all my family saying, this happened under my roof, but it's not my fault."
Is that right?
So I've been a Baha'i now for over 50 years and traveled to different countries, lived in different countries, met people all over the world, which was wonderful. And the Baha'i faith is the same in every country where it's put in place. And we have no hierarchy, no clergy. Everybody's working on their own spiritual development. And with the elected Baha'i administration in each town and country, the faith is growing, and it's a beautiful thing.
It is. Well, Bill, that was a great story. I didn't know it. Unless my memory, I forget a lot of things these days, but unless we talked about it and I forgot about it, but sure glad to hear it again or for the first time, whichever it may be. And yeah, I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Yes,
And
I'll hope to get to hear your other programs. Thank you for including me.
you're welcome.